You didn't get the podcast room, Vendetta.
I wanted to, but it's €5 per hour. So I was wondering if it's worth.
Well, apparently, if there's a lot of background noise, or if there's a big lamp behind your head, like Malte had last time, then then it can be worth it.
Well, I deliberately booked a meeting just because of that. So here we are.
Great. Well, welcome to episode 2. And today we already have a guest, and this is going to be a great discussion. Last time we had this interesting discussion about submeters, and of course, keeping it internal, we were like 3 people agreeing on basically the same things, and sparked a really good discussion, in particular on LinkedIn. And so, of course, what we needed to do was invite some of the people that maybe have other perspectives and maybe get even more discussion on this. Of course, we don't want to spend necessarily the entire episode on submeters again, but we think it's super important to continue as we have this fresh in our minds. But other than that, we have a bunch of insights from a conference you did, Benedetto, this week about measurement and verification that we want to share, and potentially also have some discussion around. So great. So first, introducing Rasmus. Thanks for joining. Quite the last minute, message from Malte. Can you join podcast in an hour? So really appreciate it. Rasmus, you're at ProptechOS and now, and you've been in the business here for a long time, both in across all of the, I guess, PropTech space with data collection, IoT, energy, and security, and everything, right? So can you just give the audience a 30-second intro, and then we'll be on our way with the discussion.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a really big pleasure. And I really had to go out and shave and that stuff because I was just working from home. So I had to prepare for this. Yeah, I've been in this business for many, many years, doing business critical solutions within security and governance and compliance. And I also have worked very much with this kind of estimated data. I think this is about how to utilize data to get a certain level of insight, and sometimes that level is enough. Right now I'm working so much with AI and agentic buildings, and in that sense, it's even better to have data that is maybe 95-98% correct than spending 2 years getting 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
We are in an urgency. We can't wait 2 years to save carbon emissions.
Exactly. So being efficient about it. Okay. So Malte, you had this post on LinkedIn that sparked a lot of good discussions. What's your takeaway on that?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. So I think in the last episode we introduced it as a mud fight, and it turned out that we actually pretty much agree. But obviously, coming from the same company and having worked in a certain way with energy data that we do at Into for the past many years, then we tend to agree quite a lot with each other because we've had a lot of these discussions already. But then the beauty really comes when you then talk about those perspectives with someone who's not been introduced to those kinds of ideas that we are so used to in Into, and that created this kind of debate on LinkedIn with like 40 comments back and forth and good arguments for and against submeters. So my thoughts around it really centers around communication. Actually, so when we're saying that submeters are not important, we're not saying that it's not important to measure on your needs for instance, cooling or heating, where it's actually quite the opposite. So when we founded Into with the mission to reduce energy consumption in buildings, we pretty quickly found out that stuff is driving consumption in these buildings. we had a problem building with our models because we couldn't explain the full consumption without introducing temperature. It turned out that this building had a heat pump, and that's why we introduced the outside temperature as an explanatory variable to the main meter's consumption. And that's basically where it started back in 2019 or 2020, when we started to introduce these machine learning models that were built on main meter data. And you could say we tried to hack us around not having the submeter, because had we had a submeter on the heat pump, then we probably wouldn't have needed to introduce a machine learning model that was basically normalizing or estimating this heat pump's consumption. So that's kind of where it started, and that was kind of a long introduction to it. But I think it's important to understand that we actually care quite a lot about these important, or these SEUs, so the large energy consuming units in the buildings.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that we kind of ended on with the last episode was also this part about there are of course use cases for submeters in doing billing or even problem finding, right? But it might not be where you should start. If you can start, with the existing equipment, or you might even already have submeters as well, but just integrating only to the main meters first, and then when there's a problem, you can always expand. I think that's also a bit of the nuance that maybe sometimes is lost there. But that's definitely an important point. Yeah, Rasmus, what's your take?
Exactly. What is so important is that you're going out, you're doing the initial diagnostics. You're telling the customer, this is the potential you have. And then today you ask your autonomous agents to look inside afterwards, but you do it in the manner where you have the largest potentials first, of course. Whether it's water leakage, that is then driving to some special kind of project afterwards, or if it's district heating, return temperature, those kind. Because when you look into a big portfolio, you don't know where to start, and it takes years to come around everything. So you need to have this fast access based on available data. And to me, available data is not necessarily public available, but where you are, you need to sign up all these kind of things, and that is what should drive the energy management in the beginning.
Yeah,
I know this was not a fight. We are maybe agreeing too much, so I'm not allowed to come again.
yeah, exactly. No. I think just bringing in nuance for the discussion is is an important part. I just want to show one thing that might, because we are kind of serious when we say you should not do it, and some might say, well, how can you know what the cooling consumption is? How can you ever get any insight into that if you just have the main meter data? And so maybe it's also helpful to just show a little bit how we do that, because it's based on a lot of both research and then kind of applied machine learning and AI down the line, right? Just sharing real quick here, and feel free to jump in. But I just pulled this into a document, and what this is a figure from actually from our system. We typically say we go kind of into the engine room of the model. You can get this out, so typically the user doesn't have to worry about this, but it can help bring some confidence to some of the things that we say. And what this shows is what we call a cooling profile. So it's basically extracting the effects of a increasing temperature on energy consumption. And so that's done through various kind of tricks and models and statistical analysis. But the output is kind of this profile. And what we can then see from this is actually quite a few things. So we have, and never mind the units here is actually in kilowatt hours, but it's normalized, and so it's around 0. But what we can see is actually there's an increase from very low temperatures until a certain point, and then
cooling is outside temperatures.
exactly. So this should say outside temperature in Celsius. So thanks for pointing that out. So you have an increase up to a certain point, and then you have an even bigger increase. And this means that there's some kind of set point very clearly here. And mind you, this is a huge supermarket, right? So it's not just a small building that only has one. So it's actually a very clear signal from a very large building, just on main meter data and these weather variables. So what you can see here is actually, well, we can see that in this system, there's a set point around here, 13, 14 degrees, which is, I guess, typical for the comfort cooling. And then you have some kind of efficiency of how much extra energy is being spent per extra degree as you move along. You can also see that there's some slope before that set point. And in this case, being a supermarket, they obviously have a lot of refrigerators and freezers and so on. So in this case, that shows the extra consumption that is needed, even if it's still cold outside, but you obviously need that energy consumption still. And the last thing that it highlights, at least very quickly, is that there's been changes in this profile as well. So these gray dots are kind of from before, and then the system evolved into what we see today. And so this is changes in the settings or in the efficiency or in the system. And of course, it doesn't say like we go from this particular type of equipment or these settings necessarily, but it tells you something about the overall the overall performance of the assets, right? And so that's just to bring that in.
I think it's a great example, Henrik, of showing that with what you could call less data, it's just a main meter, but more external data and some models, you can actually bring quite a lot of knowledge in and or give some insights that you wouldn't get otherwise. What I'm typically using is actually my private household because I have a heat pump, and then I show the graph. I'd be happy to show it so you can see how it works in the actual app because there's other variables as well. Cooling here is just one of them that is kind of important to normalize for or that is affecting the consumption in this particular building.
Yeah, and I just want to say also to some of the comments on the thread was around, for example, ISO certification, where you need to measure and report on the large energy consumers on the building. And one of the things that you can imagine is that this is kind of an abstract kind of database version, but you can imagine you could translate this into an actual cooling consumption or cooling system, both on the process cooling and on the comfort cooling. And so then you actually have that, or at least you're able to estimate that in a pretty good way. And in many cases, when you do these certifications anyway, it's kind of some of those things are estimated, right? And so this would just be a highly informed estimate that actually is based on thousands of buildings bringing in all of this knowledge into this reporting.
Which is actually something that we've done for solar panels for the past many years. So virtual meters on cooling and heating is not something that we've introduced yet, maybe after today. But because a lot of solar panels does not have dedicated production meters, we're just seeing the consumption. And then we've needed to be able to draw the production out of the consumption, which is basically a math equation. And that is something that we've done now for a few years, where we've been able to test the accuracy of that, because about 10% of the solar panels we have on our platform has the production data. We could test the accuracy of the models and how well it's performing. And I think the rule of thumb we saw then was around a 5% deviance from the annual estimated production versus the annual measured production. So it can become extremely precise and without any need of installing any new hardware. Yeah.
So Rasmus, you're you know a lot of these customers as
Mm.
well. You know, what would be the reaction on some of this? I mean, we are spending a lot of time also with our customers to explain why and how. It's a little, you don't have to do as much, but how do you think and how do you react in these situations? Where are the things that we're missing?
First of all, I see there's a lot of possibility to do this, let's call them calculated or estimated meters. And you can do that on different kind of assets where you know what is driving them. A solar panel, you have a size, you have a manufacturer, you have an inverter and stuff like that. And you have the solar radiation in the morning, blah, 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 all that stuff. Then you can do very precise calculation right away. And actually, this is, I will almost say this is real-time data. And then you can compare it after 2 or 3 or 4 days when you get the real data, maybe from the utility about what you have produced. And using these, you can scale fast. You can take the geographical parts into account. I usually say that 8 o'clock in the morning, looking at your alarms, it's not 8 o'clock in the morning if you're in Esbjerg or Rønne in Bornholm, or maybe across another country, because you might have half an hour of difference between the sun. So you need to use these way more sophisticated ways and easy to get these insight. Because if you have, let's say you have stores all over the country, you can't say that I want an alarm at 8 o'clock or something like that. It's only in the school that everybody's meeting at 8, but the sun is shining half an hour before in Bornholm than it is in the western part of Denmark, for instance.
Yeah, for sure. You definitely need, and we also have, of course, very local weather for all buildings in order to do this. But the interesting part is you don't even need, you don't even need the size of the PV system or the manufacturer, anything. Actually, what we do on that part is just from the main consumption meter. We combine it with, of course, as precise as possible, solar radiation data and everything else, right? So you can extract it from heating and cooling and all the other stuff. And then we estimate the solar PV meter, and then we can still be quite precise. Just in the drop on this hour where we expect something else, we can estimate the production. And that actually leads to estimating also changes in that, because if something suddenly changes there, and that's where the important part is, because I mean, of course, reporting can be important for some certifications and so on, but the actual importance is in detecting if there's issues, if you want to save on energy. And that's, of course, the main lens of this, right? So for that, then you can basically do the calculation without any of this stuff. And then, of course, we can collect, okay, what is the capacity, so that we make sure that it's within the right ranges and stuff like that. But changes in the data you can actually collect without.
Yeah, but this is a very good example of one of those comments where I made in terms of water leakage. The risk related to having a solar panel not producing for 3 or 4 days is only it's lost money. You're paid for this. If it doesn't work, you don't get a benefit, and maybe it's because it needs cleaning. So that's a good example. Another example, which is a little bit more, is that having this with using these data that comes 1 or 2 days after for water leakage, because you don't want a huge water leakage running for 2 days. So that's 2 different ways, and maybe that is one of the reasons that some can be skeptical, because we or they or the building owners, they don't necessarily know the differences on these. So it has to be show and tell, show that this works, and maybe some needs to have a real meter to check. Oh, it works. Okay, now I'm confident. And it's standard change management. You need to accept that this is good enough. Instead of waiting one year to get meters all over your 200 buildings, you can get this in 2 days, I guess. So it's both a a good point to do this. But
it's
yeah.
also an interesting point about communication, right? Because Rasmus, you're very well into this entire sector, and you might not even be aware that a lot of the water companies today can actually send data every hour.
Yeah.
So even if the hourly the data is just hourly, they can also send it every hour, which means we actually have multiple of our customers that are in this real time. I know it's not IoT real time, but energy real time data regime where we can actually detect these leaks and they can replace their leak detection systems, which obviously are very high risk, high stakes systems that many of them need to have, both in addition to whatever we can do, but in many cases, actually, we're starting to get there where even that can be done without submeters.
Yeah, and we can just speak this about leak detection because some utilities can provide this within an hour. That's fine, and we have to remember that some of these billing owners are coming from a world where they got data maybe 24 hours after, due to legacy systems. They're waiting for data, not what we can call a good, fast, efficient communication. So some customers can get that fast. And then it's a challenge, I guess, also for you, because depending on what kind of building it is, you need, of course, the baseline, because what is the baseline? When is it that you actually have the baseline on the water consumption? Is it 100 hours or 100 liters per hour? Is that okay? Maybe, maybe not. And then this could be an argument to some of these that are doing submeters or sensors. It's nice to have a leakage alarm in the morning. But if you have a school with 8,000 square meters, then you spend 3 hours or 6 hours to find this. And then you find, oh, it's that toilet again. And that's how it is. We should
put the kids to work. Put the kids to work. They can run around and find the toilet, right?
Yeah, I proposed that to one of the Danish manufacturers of these leak sensors. Why ask the kids to mount these on the toilets? But it's still good to, and now we're a little bit back to the communication. It's good to do a little bit of provocation. And that's what you did. And the same day, another one did the same about the BR18 bygningsreglementet in Denmark. A little bit provocation. I've got so many good feedbacks from the people I speak with that they love this discussion on LinkedIn. They are tired of looking at people's dogs and pictures from the beach and weekends, whatever. They actually now they get a good and sober discussion.
Yeah.
And we spent also Mel and I spent a few hours on doing this discussion. It was fun. But if you read it through, I'm pretty sure that you also see some of the, as a reader, that we actually agree. It's just about what is it the scope is and what is it your initial problem is.
But yeah, okay. So just to sum that up, I think there has been really positive feedback on kind of having clear statements, because as exactly as you said, a lot of things on, for instance, on LinkedIn is just fluff, and there's no clear. Quite positive on the engagement as well, and this is also why we're taking this follow-up on it. But I think Henrik, you said early on communication, and Benedetto has a PhD in machine learning. Henrik, you don't even have a PhD. You have only written a book about applied machine learning in industries, right? But the problem is that a lot of the facility management people might not have a PhD in statistical analysis. And this graph alone is actually quite a lot of information. So I think there is a huge change management, Rasmus, job to be done here. And that is why we keep seeing this barrier. Because, for instance, now we're actually we're not talking about the cooling meters anymore. Because when Henrik can present a graph like this, that it's actually showing the very precise set point without you telling us that there's even a cooling system, then we can get so much more knowledge. And now we're starting to kind of preach to the choir. You are already convinced, other people are convinced, and that is a part of the goal with communicating, is that people can change perspectives, because we see, oh, something is possible now that it just wasn't a year ago or 5 years ago, yourself included. With, I've seen you've done a lot in Lovable, for instance, and like, if someone told you 2 years ago you'll be able to code your own front end without any kind of technical experience, you probably said, I don't think so. And here we are, right, where things are just moving so fast.
I need to get out with my Friday rant.
Yeah.
Because now I'm working on, we're also getting all this data from inside the building. And I heard that you need to spend days, literally days and days, to prepare the internal system to provide data. And one thing we have today that we didn't have 6 months ago is the MCP server. Seriously, it takes 10 minutes to install an MCP server connected to the right system, like your calendar or whatever. And then you start from, and you use Lovable, for instance. And thanks, Malte, for introducing Lovable to me for, is that 6-7 months ago? You get way faster access to these data. And I think that the people that are coming in to the facility management now, they take this AI machine learning as they need to do this, because they don't want to look through a lot of Excel spreadsheets and doing macros in Excel and become the Excel macro king of the company. They want to execute on this. And it's not because I say that everybody else prefer to do Excel, but they have a lot of other knowledge that we need. But I think the future for this is very bright. So maybe we also sometimes have to wait and not be so, what should I say?
I think there's
Impatient.
Yeah.
Impatient.
I've been called impatient, I think 3 or 4 times this week, and I've said thank you every time. So if a fifth is up there, then I think it's good to be impatient, and then otherwise we can't change the industry. So
great.
Yeah. Should we move on, Henrik? Is that where you are? Yeah.
Let's do it. So maybe Benedetto, you can give a quick recap of what happened in Birmingham, and then I think there's a few discussion points around that.
Yeah, of course. So we had a conference in Birmingham. It was called Verified, and it was all about verifying energy efficiency. Some might think it's a little bit crazy that you actually have conferences about that, but yeah, it's quite a few nerds like us who really like energy savings and how to verify them. And even there, I think there was a lot of discussion again about submeters. I think you could really see the difference between this legacy energy management and how things used to be, and what we are and other companies like at the forefront of AI native energy management are trying to bring. So for example, regarding submeters, there was a lot of option A and B, of course, IPMVP option A and B, which is you need to specifically measure the equipment that are actually producing the savings, and then like I come in and say, hey, look, I think we can do this just by implementing AI to get very accurate estimations of those meters that are producing the savings. And I think like you really don't need a submeter. Then, most of the reaction is, okay, you hate submeters, and submeters have been kind of the backbone of energy management for the past 50 years. And so you cannot just come in and say like they're not good. And but really, like, I think we don't hate submeters. We hate energy being wasted, and we hate inaction. And we are really here to bring the fastest path to value. And we don't think that goes through submeters, because if you have submeters, great, we'll use them. We are a data company. We will analyze your submeter data. If you don't, we have an alternative that will get you to action in a week. So it was I was trying to get through there at the conference. And then, of course, there was it was really evident that most of MMV is still done manually, is still done with monthly billing data, and just during while these sessions were being run, many verifications were being registered on our platform, and we just verified them in a couple of minutes. So it was really striking that the difference between legacy and AI native kind of energy management. Malte, you have a comment about that?
So I think we actually need to zoom out a little bit, because Benedetto, you have actually, now we talked about your PhD earlier, you have actually written your PhD in measuring and verifying energy savings using machine learning models. So you are an absolute expert in this field, whereas measuring energy savings is not done in a lot of countries and in a lot of for a lot of building owners and in a lot of applications. So I think we need to zoom out a little bit before we dive in to this, just to give a color on why it's important and how it's even done today. So yes, thank you, Henrik. I don't know if I can try and explain, and then you can zoom in a bit here and there. But the whole notion of making a MNV is a measurement and verification, and that is to calculate what the consumption was before, and then measure what the consumption was afterwards, after you've done some kind of intervention, and then estimate what the effects of the intervention you did, what it actually is. And because you can't really measure what the consumption would have been after your intervention, you need a really good statistical model or an understanding of what the consumption would have been had you not done this. So that is the kind of the challenge of MNV, is to estimate what the consumption would have been, and then basically subtracting these two numbers and giving a result. Before we dive in, Rasmus, now that we have you on the call as well, you've been doing energy management for 30 years or 20 years. I don't know. Sorry, I don't want to do some kind of ageism here, but longer than I have, at least in Denmark. Why do we think measurement and verification hasn't been a huge part of energy management, at least in my opinion, in the past? Or am I wrong? Or what's your opinion on this?
It's really weird somehow. I came into this energy management through an acquisition. We acquired a company that was doing EPC projects. And so that was actually very precise. You need to measure very precise. You need to use the right meters that were approved, and accuracy and all that stuff. And of course, you need to trust the calculations inside the system. That's one thing. But using the submeters and discussing baseline and how do we share the gain, and discussing, oh, you promised the 15% and now we say 20. I want those 5 last ones. That no, that's mine. You know, all these discussions that it's in the ESCO and EPC. I have not seen it so much in the last couple of years, 5 years maybe. It's like there are so many other things that are uncertain in this. You have this baseline, and you define the baseline. Is that 2020 or 2013? So you want to save 10% the next 5 years, depending on the baseline you can reach this maybe. So I don't see that much. I don't hear that the people are going so much, focusing so much on the actual savings, because there's also all these non-energy benefits of doing this. And now it's a planet. We want to save the planet. We don't only want to save our costs. Maybe it's because all the financial controllers are out of these projects. I really don't know. But I have a question to you, Benedetto, because I was in a project that's some years ago, and you can get these clamp-on sensors. Just clamp them on, and they have a certain accuracy of 1 or 2 or 5, I don't know, %. And there was a discussion that we need these to be so precise because we can't use them, because we have promised 3% savings on this project. Is that Is that because at that time we were so focused on total cost, on financial measures, and not so much on saving the planets and make a better planet for our kids? That stuff.
Yeah, I think it's just, I mean, I don't want to make strong statements, but I think it's almost unreasonable to say that you want to get 3% savings and prove that with accuracy. Like, buildings are real, living, complex entities, and it's really difficult to get to that level of accuracy, especially when like this kind of uncertainty compounds, right? So you will have a little bit of uncertainty that comes from the sensor equipment. Then you will have uncertainty that comes from your modeling. Then you have uncertainty that comes from the variables that you're not able to measure, right? And this, all of it compounds, and usually is going to be at least around 2-3%. So if your goal is proving 2-3%, it's going to be really difficult. And one of the advantages in this sense of using IPMVP option C, which is then our whole building energy management, energy verification, whole facility, would be that it's the utilities responsibility to ensure that the data that is being read is correct. Just because it's part of the contracts when you are billing people for electricity and organizations. So then you don't need to worry anymore about your plant equipment, and you don't need to maintain it. You don't need to recalibrate it, because you can just trust what the utility sends you, because they are doing the heavy lifting on making sure that the numbers there are accurate. So I think this is just another kind of example of the added value of doing whole building assessments.
Yeah, so just two thoughts around this. If Rasmus has seen a downfall in MNV from your perspective, because I think there might have been in some markets, whereas other markets it's the complete opposite. So when I'm looking at the Danish market, obviously there's a lot of our customers coming from Denmark. The measurement and verification and using protocols is not really there unless you're doing energy performance contracts, so these EPC projects. And they are really not popular in the Nordics, at least not in Denmark. Whereas if you look at the Italian market or the UK market, there's a lot of responsibility on your external parties. So you're working very, very closely with your BMS provider or your ESCO. Whereas in the Nordics, we have a lot of that knowledge in-house, and that creates a lesser need to do this exact thing. Because obviously, if you are paying your ESCO on a performance contract, you are measuring cents here and there, right? So that's why I see the differences in the markets, because of this underlying, the fundamental difference between how you're engaging as a building owner with your external parties. So that's just some color on that thing. And then the rule of thumb that I don't know that don't think you said, Benedetto, is that when you're doing IPMVP option C, there is I think the rule of thumb is 5% or is it 10%? If you're going for a lesser saving than that, option C is actually not the right choice. So because of the uncertainty is there, then the bigger the saving, obviously the easier you can do it on the whole building. And I think the rule of thumb in the IPMVP in the protocol and in the documentation of it says 5 or 10%. Can you confirm, Benedetto?
Yeah, if in the guideline is 10%. Yeah, but then again, this protocol hasn't been updated in quite some time. I mean, there have been some updates, but not large methodological updates that take into account the new methods.
No.
So I would say that thanks to the new data logging and data analysis capabilities that we have, this number should be likely lower than 10%, right?
Yeah. Just a quick note here while we have it up. That's also why we also spend some time, calculating the uncertainties as well as we can, and that there's a whole research behind how you do that as well, of course. But this is important in order to understand, okay, how certain are we about the percent that we're actually claiming here for option C?
So the plus minus is a 95% confidence.
Yeah, basically.
Correct.
Yeah. You can state it in different ways, but this is the way that's easiest to understand. And just a quick note, and then Rasmus, I'll also give it over to you again. But a quick note, I think Benedetto, you said, like, instead of the legacy ways, we can do it with AI. And I just wanted to bring a little nuance in there, because it is basically, it's just using the same type of models that we just showed with the cooling profile, right? So it's just the MNV algorithm and measurement is really able to make this distinction between, for example, cooling changes or temperature changes or other types of changes, and give the best possible estimate of a change that is outside of that, or that is caused by a change in the system. So it's not more advanced necessarily than that. It's just kind of the same models. We even put it in here as well for the same kind of inspection that you can do on these models. So just a quick technical note as well for people who are interested.
Yeah, and it feels like we could almost have a whole dedicated episode at some point on this stuff, because there's just so much to it, right?
Exactly.
For the nerds, right?
Then,
Because for some people, this is their entire job. I've met people come up to me at a conference in the UK saying, following IPMVP for measurement and verification, that's what I do. and others, some of our clients in Denmark, for instance, aren't even registering their savings, right? So there's just a very big difference in the application of such tool.
Rasmus, you had a comment.
Yeah, that's maybe two short comments, but what is of course driving all this energy management is now not only the money, the 2%, 5%, 10% savings. It's also regulatory. It's ISO 50001 requirements from EU. Now the EPBD is coming in. It's ESG reporting, where you, if you're not doing this, you end up with a way larger shitstorm that we were risking about it. But also to just have another perspective on this, what I hear from facility operators that do these kind of things, they experience also that around 20% of the total savings they can provide to their clients is actually micro savings. It's on the small things. So that's also one thing to add to this, that using a system like Enter, whatever it could be, you find a lot of good savings. But you can actually add maybe, depending on how you calculate the percentage, 20-25% on top of that, on what you're doing day to day. Closing that water because it was wrong or that didn't work. So that's also something to happen into this very tech AI stuff, and I like that, I love that. But the people that are walking around doing a good job, they account for these 20% of the total savings, but they are not accounted. So that's, I say to some customers, if you start accounting this, you will easily save 10% on your reporting.
I have to make a comment on this because so what Benedetto or Henrik, whoever showed the screen before, was showing was on a project level. And we did something really fun after the energy crisis, because that was basically a case study of people being extra careful with their energy consumption. And instead of doing MNV on a project level, we did it on a portfolio level. So we introduced this concept of what we call performance verifications, but across sites. So I had a client where we talked about exactly this, because they introduced some pretty severe or high kind of priority things that they wanted to do across all of their shops. And then we wanted to measure what the effects of those were. And we couldn't pinpoint he did that or she did this, So what we did was we took hundreds of buildings and then said, this is the period. And we want to compare it with a baseline. And then we saw it, and it was not one thing or another thing, and here and there. It was all of the things combined, and we could see the effects of it. And then what they actually did was that they took it, and instead of, so you can of course give a carrot and say, okay, the ones that did well, they really deserve something because they saved a lot of money. But you could also take it the other way around and say, now that we are a few years later, what happened in this and that store? So that's also a way of doing it. But yeah, it's really an important aspect is this, and it's again change management. It's the people out there in the at the different sites that really makes the difference.
But just one short comment. We don't have time to do it the old-fashioned way. We have to adapt, and we have to make it even faster than ever before. 15 years ago, you could install 600 meters, and it took 3 years. We are in so much of an urgency, and the technology is here to help us. We have seen how fast technology is evolving. So that, from my side, this is a good news that we can react way faster today than we could 5 years ago.
Benitz, I don't know if you had any last comments on the topic.
Yeah, I think again, if we take a step back and start thinking more about the outcome and less about the tool, we really need to think about how we can save the most energy with the least spend, in some sense, investment cost. And that is super relevant for public authorities because they only have like limited taxpayers' money, but even for private companies, because their profitability is linked to the ratio between their costs and revenue, right? So then I think we need to start judging all of these energy management systems not anymore by the amount of dashboard that they can show, but more about how many euros we can verify per week and per month, and that is based on how fast you can get the data, how fast you can get the insights into what should be fixed operationally, and then after that, how fast you can verify that whatever you did is actually having the impact that you expected. So I think this is actually our vision, right, for the sector for the next few years.
Great, amen. Perfect ending there, and now Mandela can also make it for lunch, so it's all good. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Rasmus, for joining. And yeah, thanks for the discussion, and see you next time.